Thank you, everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk about the project that I worked on. So, I'm Sonam Gupta. I currently work as a senior developer advocate at aiXplain. And the topic of my talk today is from podcasting to instant insights. Now, I host a podcast and I have many episodes so far. Now, going back to all the videos and audios to go listen to it just to get some insights, that sounds monotonous and time consuming process. So now what I thought of doing that to resolve that is to turn all these hours of podcast audio into instant searchable insights. So you can, ask questions, figure out what was the topic that was talked about, and many other questions. Now, how I did it is pretty simple. I took all the audio files from the podcast, which was of course pre-recorded, that were already recorded. I transcribed them using OpenAI's Whisper model, which was pretty accurate using that model. And then I took those Whisper text files, or sorry, transcribed text files, and stored it in ApertureDB. Now, it helped me organize all the transcripts and metadata for efficient retrieval. And what I could do, basically, you making the text machine understandable, I could use that transcribed text on ApertureDB for semantic understanding, and just not just semantic understanding, but also chatting with it. To talk just a little bit about the technical details, I used Cohere's embeddings to transform the text into numerical vector representation without going too much into what embeddings are. And of course, I used LangChain's integration with ApertureDB for doing a lot more, whether it was chunking and just making it a streamlined workflow for me to build this particular project. Now, I don't want to go into too much theoretical detail. Instead, I would like to show you a quick demo. But before the demo, I would want to show like how I could do the semantic search and chat using ApertureDB. Now, the edge or the power of ApertureDB lies here. First, you can, of course, do a quick smart search for contextually aware results from all the podcast transcripts that I stored. Then I have this interactive chat where I used Cohere's Command R plus model, where I can just simply ask question and answer directly from to with my podcast data. And using ApertureDB, I can scale for as many transcripts as I want, as much data as I want to add, because it can handle the growing collection with providing consistent performance throughout the data. Throughout the process. And of course, given that it's unified platform, it integrate all the metadata and the vector search in just one streamlined powerful system. So I hope that's just a little bit clear, but I'm sure Gavin will talk a lot more about the ApertureDB architecture in the next presentation. I want to show a quick demo of the of my data, of my project here. There we go. Okay. So of course, simple thing is just you have to install all the libraries, then you import all the required ones. Here is how, in one line, you can create a configuration. This is something once you create an account on ApertureDB, this is what your dashboard would look like once you upload some data. Now, I'll come back to this particular screen in a minute. Once I create a podcast chat, which is where I basically created my instance on Aperture Data, and then I have my host, created my password, and then from the Colab notebook, I basically just use this one line of code to access that. And then you can check the status using just this particular line. You can see that, okay, system is running okay, all's fine. And then I connect to my instance using creating the connector client. And
Sonam, do you want to increase the font size just
yes,
that
thank
a little
you.
bit?
Yeah, one moment, please. Hope this is good. Do not copy my password. But just kidding. So, Gavin, is this okay now?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So once you're connected to your client on ApertureDB, you can check it will show you once it runs clearly with no error. It will just run simply. You can always check for any status if you wish. And now this is where I start uh, the audio transcripts that I had. I have uploaded them, and this is what it looks like on your dashboard. Now, here you see this is a nice little representation of what my data distribution is like. It shows you what the descriptors, what the data type is. Um, and it will also show you like how many files you have, and if whether or not you're how much CPU you're utilizing, what's your storage consumption, and what's your memory consumption. So I don't have a lot of data here right now, but this is a nice little view on your dashboard that you can see. Going back to my code, um, here is where in this particular line, in this particular piece of code is where I call the cohere's embedding function. And again, Cohere embeddings, I'm using the LangChain integration for Cohere and ApertureDB. And you can provide your Cohere embedding model, whichever you're using. In this case, I'm using the version 3, and I believe there is a new version of embedding model as well that you can use. Once you provide what your embedding model is going to look like, you can call ApertureDB vector store, and you can enter, okay, this is the descriptor set, which is the embedding model in this case, and you provide the name for it. Once you have that set up, you will run that, and then you basically initiated that, okay, I'm calling the Cohere's embedding model. And here is where you can mention, or you can write what metadata from your actual database do you really want to access. So for this project, the metadata that I have is guest name, title, profession, their LinkedIn profile, the company they work on, and so on. So I basically, it's a simple line of code. In line number 20, this is where you basically connect to your Aperture vector store DB, and then you pass the query, which is what I have set up here. I'm not going to go too many into too many details of what each of these parameter means. We have the documentation will is pretty self-explanatory. Now, once I have the metadata set up, you can see that I have over 600 documents, which is basically all the the text transcripts of my audio files along with their metadata. And here I'm just checking like, okay, what are the IDs? I think because of Google Colab, I think you don't see the entire output, which is fine. This is where I'm basically just adding these documents, which is the metadata of my transcripts, into ApertureDB. Now here comes the fun part. This is where I start chatting with my data. I basically mentioned that, okay, I'm going to use a similarity metric. I want three results that are used by the LLM. And then after that, I would want like, the top similar results. And I just basically call the retriever function, provide all my value, the parameter values in it. And then I go ahead and call the coheres command R model. Now, here comes the prompting. Now, once I have all the Cohere setup, Cohere embedding model set up, the retriever model set up, and vector store as well, I provide a template. I say that, okay, you are a question and answering chat assistant. You're going to use my podcast transcript data to answer the questions at the end. And of course, also share the metadata which come with it. And this is the basic, you can the LangChain basically provides a nice way of mentioning, okay, or chaining your prompt, your model, and the string output parser. Once I have all this set up, I start asking some questions. I've already run this, so now my question that I'm asking is like, how does RAG technique help in building LLM applications? Now let's see what the answer we get. Okay, pretty fast as you see. It will tell you that, okay, RAG is, it will define what the RAG is. Right now, it's not showing me the metadata. Again, no idea why. Live demos are hard. I will tell you that. And LLMs have their own thing. But anyway, if you scroll down, I have more questions that I have asked. Like, okay, what is a knowledge graph? It will basically tell you all the answers that it extracts from the podcast data. And in this particular answer, like you see, it explained, okay, what's a knowledge graph, what is the idea behind it. It will give you some examples as well. And now here you see that companies like Bytewax and BV8 are working on products. Now, how did this come into the picture? Because it basically connected the podcast episodes with the co-founders of Bytewax and BB8 who were guests on the podcast, and it basically retrieved the answer from those episodes. And one more example here I had asked is like, what are some of the AI industry highlights that you can share? It shared some answers such as, sector. It highlights according to the podcast transcripts. It will tell you that e-commerce, legal banks are implementing AI rapidly. Then it told us about, okay, Bob, who's the co-founder of VV8, has the database models, and then and Piyush, who's co-founder of Weave AI, he also mentioned or talked about generative AI for enterprises. And then I had this fun question asking, like, okay, what is the purpose of agents? Here is where you see, like, okay, the question I asked, and then it answered what the agents are. And then it showed, okay, this is the metadata that the answer was associated or retrieved from, where it says, this is the broadcast title. The guest company is Kentaurus AI, and guest is a founder. And it also showed, like, okay, which segment it came from. So the more the more you refine your prompt, you can of course get more detailed answer. But the great thing about storing your metadata, and again, this is something I can improve more on for this project, is that I can ask more detailed metadata related questions. You can access that because this is how it's stored on the database. And the next or the future improvement that I would like to do is extract the video segments where that answer was extracted from. So yeah, so this was just like a sample project that I wanted to do, and I can keep asking more and more questions, and the answers could be more refined based on the prompt that I give. So yeah, that was just a quick run through my project, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.